Welcome to another lively edition of the Deadly Experiment. All of you, ladies and gentlemen, and children of all ages, welcome back to this important program about end-time prophecies and the Word of God. And what is befalling our world today? Well, I don't need to tell you that our world is out of control. Just look around you. Everything is topsy-turvy, upside down. Violence is everywhere. Vileness is everywhere. America has extended her arsenal of troops all over the globe now, diminishing her real ammunition, her energy, her resources, spending money that she does not have, borrowing trillions of dollars upon trillions with very high interest to repay to the bankster gangsters, of course. America, Rhode Island, a microcosm of the nation, a nation that is being divided amongst itself. We have called it a new civil war in America. Nations rising against nations, earthquakes, hurricanes, storms, all of these things are told to us in the Gospels and in the prophecies of our Bible, the Old Covenant. They tell us exactly what would befall us in the last days. Do you realize that the prophecies of the Bible, most of them given in all the major and minor prophets, are for this age today? Not for the previous ages, not for the thousands of years back, but for today. Today is the generation of the evil fig tree that would be planted in Jerusalem in the Middle East, and that year would be 1948. Now, I didn't say that. My Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, said it. The prophets said it. They said that the rulers of that city, when Jesus returns to the earth with the sword, not on an ass, but with a sword on a white horse to bring judgment, he will first descend on the Mount of Olives and destroy the city of Jerusalem and all of its evil. The city of Egypt and Sodom, it's referred to in the Bible. Today, all we need to do is look around when we hear the word sodomy. Look around at what has unfolded in Hollywood in the last several months of this particular time we're taping. And you know what, folks? It's no surprise to Rick Adams. Rick Adams has been telling you this for a long time. Hollywood is Sodom East or West or North or South. Los Angeles is literally a garbage pit. It is a stench-filled dumping site, a toxic waste site. And with the revelations emanating from, of all places, the New York Times, one of the tribesmen factors of those whom they are attacking and exposing, namely the Weinstein family and the Weinstein Company, which is now all but gone, all but in the ash heaps of history. With the possible now indictment for rape charges in New York and even in Europe of Harvey Weinstein. He and his brother Bob have quite a career of filth, degeneracy, perversion, all kinds of vile movies, and of course their mother and father, who were known as Miriam and Max, were the inspiration for his original Hollywood company, Miramax Pictures. Disney's Miramax Pictures. Did you know that Miriam and Max were two hardcore communists, socialists during the 1920s and 30s, and actually were naturally siding with the Reds, the Soviet Union, in World War II. They and a host of other of the tribes of Cain and his seed line, the Satan seed line today, were very busy painting the Soviet Union as a rosy paradise on earth. And we now know, of course, at least some of us do, how absolutely false that picture was. Well, Hollywood today is going through, may I use the term reeling, with unfolding events that are rapidly now taking down the curtains of Tinseltown to an extent. Now, there's a methodology and a madness behind this. We can speculate as to how God is using this seed line to help destroy each other. That is, one against another. And always, always, always it comes down to the money. It comes down to who's going to bargain chip, who is going to cash in on the latest attack against others. And you know what it comes down to? The parasite and the host. Now, we're talking about parasites by very nature, the sons of Cain, the Kenites, who call themselves Jews today but are not and do lie. and are of the synagogue of Satan, Jesus' words. You see, folks, they begin to eat each other when there's not much left of their prey to eat. And so the stories are beginning to come forth about Hollywood and all of the rape charges and all of the, you do for me a few favors and you'll get an acting role. Friends, that's nothing new. We go back to the 19-teens and the 20s and the 30s. We go back to the days of Gloria Swanson. We go back to those days of D.W. Griffith. And it's no different now than it was then, believe it or not. Actors and actresses, who were given roles because of the sexual favors they would do for many of the moguls in the studio industry. And the studio industry was taken over and now, and of course even then, by the 1930s, almost exclusively run by the sons of Cain, those who say they are Jews and are not. Now, I didn't say it. History says it. Even Neil Gabler's book, An Empire of Their Own, is an open admission to the control factor and the billions and billions of dollars that Hollywood has garnered in by filth and pornography and testing the new, if you will, the new aperture, the new opening of how far they can go before somebody holds them account. And God will hold them account. You see, in the book of Ephesians, in chapter 6, Verse 12, Paul tells us it's not a flesh and blood battle, is it? He says, for we wrestle against not flesh and blood, but against powers and principalities and spiritual wickedness in high places. Not low places, high places. In other words, positions of power, government, Hollywood, all of these major industries, of course, economic, political, and yes, indeed, academic. And then we left one out, the 4 hidden dynasties that are taught in this Word of God. The most important one is religious. Within the churches today and the houses of worship, the so-called faith community, we find a lot of corruption. Not just sexual, money corruption. Priests and teachers of the Word of God engaging in fundraising, engaging in a shekel counting exercise for the love of money to keep their salaries, their pensions, and that's all that people care about today, let's face it. You're watching me now, you know what I'm talking about. All I hear wherever I go is, well, all I'm concerned about is my pension. I want to collect a pension. And the days ahead, folks, when we are taken down economically through cyber threats and so forth, we are going to see pensions disappear. Haircuts are coming. People are not going to have their pensions, and then they're going to be full prey for the synagogue of Satan. Well, let me tell you, we're going to offer you a couple of videos back to back today that I think are very fascinating, what Hollywood has done to children, child actors over the years. And one in particular, of course, who is my favorite, who I consider a friend, these trade shows and movie and memorabilia conventions held all over the United States, is Jay North. Jay North was probably most known for Dennis the Menace on TV for several years, and he doesn't have very much complimentary to say about it now. In fact, when you watch this video, you will watch Jay North, who basically was used by Hollywood as a child. He was abused by his aunt and uncle, who were his caretakers, to the point where he literally wanted to kill all of the studio heads, and we know who they are, and he knows who they are, the Keenites, to take them down in revenge for what they did to him. But he recovered. He recovered, I believe, through faith, from what I understand. Jay North, a young man who had several roles when the 60s were rolling out and then disappeared. He was no longer of use because he had become typecast. But he did go on from Dennis the Menace to Maya, the story of the young boy who was searching for his father in India with the co-star Sajid. Many of you remember Sajid, the actor. And in any event, they only made about 18 episodes of that show, and then that was taken off. Right now, hold your seatbelts, buckle them up, just stay tuned. Dennis the Menace, Jay North, telling you just how much detestable anger he has for the Hollywood system and the rulers of that city. And then following him will be Corey Feldman, whom many of you, of course, unless you're hiding under a rock, also no. Because he's making a lot of noise now, but he and some of his fellow young actors, pre-teens, pre-20s, who were molested by some of the males in Hollywood, and now he's naming some names, and he's climbing out, and his life may very well be in danger. He and, of course, the late Corey Haim, who died, I think, under questionable exercises and questionable circumstances, also was molested. So here we go. First, Jay North, and then we'll get right into the Corey Feldman segment, and then back after.
I'm sick of Dennis the Menace. I hate Dennis the Menace. I thought Dennis the Menace was a piece of garbage. I wouldn't watch the show for anything in the world. The only reason I'd watch it would be to make myself sick to my stomach, if I wanted to do that. I absolutely despise that show, and I'm sorry that I was ever associated with it. It's an evil, vile system. The people in it who run it are cruel, they are insensitive, they don't care about anybody but making money, and they don't care. The people in Hollywood would cut their own mother's throats to make a buck.
On camera, he was the lovable and mischievous boy next door. Off camera, he was an angry child who claims he was abused almost daily by his studio guardians, his aunt and uncle.
My aunt, if I didn't live up to her unrealistic expectations, she would hit me, physically abuse me. And I remember, you know, I used to wake up every morning thinking, my God, do I have to spend another day with this woman? Because I would go in and I would do a scene, and I would come off the set, and everybody would say, hey, you did a great job, and then I would get a slap across the face, or taken into the dressing room and get a spanking or a verbal tongue lashing or whatever, and she would just physically, she would grab my hair and, you know, just shake me, and just made life a living hell for the whole 4 years. And my uncle was very abusive too.
Did you say, Mom, I hate this, I don't want to do this anymore?
Unfortunately, I never told my mom about the problems on the set, because my aunt and uncle threatened me with physical abuse if I revealed that to her. So I was terrified and intimidated of everybody on the set, the production people, my aunt and uncle. I mean, they just made my life a living hell, all of them. The cast was wonderful. I want to make that very clear up front. The cast was wonderful. Herb Anderson, Gloria Henry, Jeannie Russell, all wonderful people and very, very supportive of me. I don't think they weren't really aware of all of the physical abuse. They were, you know, very aware that there were problems, and they could tell that I was an unhappy child, and that I only came alive and became this outgoing, happy little boy when I was in front of the camera. But when I was, you know, off the camera, away from the camera, and around the stage, I was a very quiet, introverted kid, and they realized that there were a lot of problems. I had a fascination with a science fiction film called The Village of the Damned, which was a science fiction classic about these blonde children who had this power where they could look at people and take control of their minds and make them do horrible things to themselves. And I wanted to do that to people. I wanted to hurt people, and I wanted to cause them the pain that they were causing me. I wanted revenge. And I remember when I would get my scripts, I used to draw in the back of my scripts, and I'd draw horrible pictures of people, especially like the production people, and I would have their names written down on the drawings. People in guillotines, people hanging, people on fire. Just horrible drawings of people being tortured and killed. And
how old were you?
I was 7, 8, 9. And nobody ever bothered to look in the script and look at these pictures and say, here is a child that is in real deep psychological trouble.
When Dennis the Menace was canceled in 1963, North acted in a few movies and starred in a short-lived TV series called Maya.
I'm Terry Bowen. You're from America? I came here to live with my father. Only they want to catch me and send me home.
But by 1970, North's career had pretty well dried up. Typecast and rejected by Hollywood, Jay North was an out-of-work former child star with no marketable skills. He spent the next decade of his life deeply depressed, living in seclusion.
Did you ever consider killing yourself?
There were many times when I thought of suicide, yeah. There were many times when I thought, I can't deal with this pain anymore that's inside of me. And there were many times that I contemplated it.
Obviously, this was an extremely painful experience for you. What kind of advice would you give other parents or other kids who want to get into this business?
Well, Paul Peterson, my friend, who was on the Donna Reed show, said something very important about parents of kids in show business. They're like rabbits on a nighttime highway. Bright lights blind them. The bright lights of Hollywood blind most parents. And my advice would be for people to just keep their kids out of show business altogether, because it just destroys lives. There's no reality base for these children whatsoever.
What will you do? What will make Jay North happy?
I can go on with my life now, but I can't forget the pain of those years. I mean, you can't forget it. But I think now I can go on with my life, and I can find a happy life, because I'm not a slave to Hollywood anymore. I'm not a slave to my aunt and uncle, and I'm not a slave to the public. I don't owe anybody a damn thing. I just have to concentrate on making myself happy now. I gave those people years of happiness. I gave my childhood to make them happy. And now I want to concentrate on making myself happy now, and to hell with everybody else.
Jay North didn't lose everything from his childhood. One upside of Dennis the Menace was the money. His mother invested it wisely in real estate, and today, Jay lives off those investments. One final note, recently Jay got married to a woman from Yugoslavia. A few months ago, she watched an episode of Dennis the Menace for the very first time. She fell asleep. Jay North says that was the ultimate compliment.
Corey Feldman has no idea what it's like not to be famous. He was just 3 years old in this McDonald's commercial.
McDonald's gift certificates.
I literally was famous before I knew my own name.
His roles defined the 80s. Goonies.
This was my dream, my wish.
Stand By Me.
You call my dad a loony again, and I'll kill you.
License to Drive.
The only difference between you and that greaseball is that he has a license and you don't.
Films that propelled him into the spotlight for his entire youth. But being famous so young, he says, caused serious damage to him and his friends.
Do you feel like you missed out on a normal childhood?
What childhood? I don't know what that means.
A lost childhood and a loss of innocence. He blames the adults, not just those looking to profit from charming children, but also some with far more sinister motives.
I can tell you that the #1 problem in Hollywood was and is and always will be pedophilia. That's the biggest problem for children in this industry.
The casting couch even applies to children.
Oh yeah. Not in the same way. It's all done under the radar.
Nobody talks about pedophilia.
It's the big secret.
And it's widespread?
Oh yeah. I was surrounded by them when I was 14 years old. Surrounded. Literally. Didn't even know it. It wasn't until I was old enough to realize what they were and what they wanted and what they were about and the types of people that were surrounding me till I went, oh my God, they were everywhere like vultures.
Vultures who Feldman says abused him and his best friend, the late child actor Corey Haim, his co-star in The Lost Boys.
Well, what happens if my mom is dating the head vampire?
Feldman says the trauma of that pedophilia contributed to Haim's death.
There's one person to blame in the death of Corey Haim, and that person happens to be a Hollywood mogul. And that person needs to be exposed, but unfortunately I can't be the one to do it. But the person that knows who did it and knows who he is watching right now, I guarantee you. Yeah.
Intriguing.
Yeah. There was a circle of older men that surrounded themselves around this group of kids. And they all had either their own power or connections to great power in the entertainment industry.
Feldman won't name names. And he admits his friend had a struggle with addiction, which he says was a mechanism to cope with his demons.
It was a symptom.
It was a symptom, correct.
Are we in it?
In 2008, the two Coreys confronted each other on their reality show about the dark past they shared.
You let me get around in my life, man, raped, so to speak, when I was about 14 and a half, and I'm saying this right now. What'd you do, man, when you saw that going down when I was 14 to me? What'd you do? You knew about it.
You want to talk about the truth? Okay, well then let's talk about the truth. I was being molested at the same time by somebody else. What'd you do? You know, there's a lot of good people in this industry, but there's also a lot of really, really sick, corrupt people in this industry. And there are people in this industry who have gotten away with it for so long that they feel they're above the law. And that's got to change. That's got to stop.
We contacted Corey Haim's mother. In an email, she said, "I'm not willing to discuss or respond to anything Corey Feldman has to say. I wish he would talk about himself only and leave my son out of it."
Is there a dark side to child stardom?
Definitely. I think a lot of kids don't really want to do it. I think that the parents want to do it more than the kids.
Chris Snyder says for most child stars, it's the parents that can cause more damage. And he would know, having managed with his late boss Iris Burton some of the most iconic child stars, including Feldman, River Phoenix, and Drew Barrymore.
The biggest problem in the whole thing is when the parents start to live through the kids and quit their jobs and buy expensive houses, buy expensive cars, and the parents aren't understanding it's not going to go on forever, and it just wrecks everything.
Feldman's parents managed his career until the money came between them.
I got legally emancipated by going to the Producer's Pension Health and Welfare Plan myself at 14 years old and saying, what were my earnings and what's left? Earnings, by the time I was 13 years old, $1 million, which is really not that much money, but in those days it was. You know, in the late 70s, early 80s, that was a good chunk of change.
And how much was left?
$40,000. And guess what? When I went in for the emancipation trial, my father said, since I spent my time with you on your last film and took it away from my office where I should have been focused, instead, I'm going to ask you for that $40,000 back as repayment for the money that I lost in my business.
You had to pay your dad?
Correct. You can check the court filings. That was a fact. Wow. So I started at zero at 15 years old, coming out of the hole.
We asked the court for the records, but they're sealed. In a statement, Corey's father, Bob Feldman, told us any money that the court awarded is a fraction of his claim. And this was a reimbursement for strictly professional expenses. For instance, private school, a publicist, professional wardrobe, traveling expenses, and lots more. This helped to save his career while he was in trouble with drug problems. I thought I was doing the best for my son, and I am always here for him. Child stardom is not a dream Feldman has for his own son.
I'll see you in a minute.
He is, after all, one of the few stars who doesn't let his child get photographed on the red carpet.
Would you ever put your own kid into the industry?
No, absolutely not.
Never?
Never. I believe that everybody in this world should have the freedom of choice.
And child stars don't?
Child stars have nothing. They have nothing. They have no choice. I was never taught how to have a family. I was never taught how to raise a child because I wasn't raised properly. I was never taught how to care for somebody because I was never shown genuine love. I was shown business. This is what you do. Here's how you read a contract. I knew how to read a contract by 10 years old, but I didn't know what it meant for somebody to come in and tell me they love me and kiss me goodnight. That's a problem.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we hope that you have learned something through the video presentations today on the deadly experiment. I think they're very valuable. I think you can see in the hearts of these people sincerity. Of course, Jay North, who was bitterly abused, and the whole Hollywood system at the time, pre-2002, was a system where they never were paid. They never received any residuals or pay from their work. It went to their caretakers or to their parents, but that, of course, had to change because of legislative action. Nevertheless, the system stinks now more than ever before. Hollywood is more corrupt, more evil than ever before. And we saw that a few years ago with the release of The Last Temptation of Christ, the story by Nikolaos Kazantzakis and the director Martin Scorsese, who we protested that film at the Showcase Cinemas in Seekonk, Massachusetts when it came out. We were interviewed in the Providence President's Journal, and we set up quite a display to inform people that this movie was absolute filth. Now, Sumner Redstone, who is now just about on his dying bed, said at the time, his real name, of course, is Murray Rothstein, he said that we had a First Amendment right, all of us, to watch anything we wanted. And his theater chain, privately owned, would not engage in censorship. Well, the movie was a box office flop, as you know. The boycotts were very successful, and that's what we need to do today. Boycott all Jewish-owned, Kenight-owned media. And let's make it effective, okay? Unfortunately, when Mel Gibson came along, they, of course, took the exact opposite stand. And I'm talking specifically about Sumner Redstone again, Showcase Cinemas, who actually had the unmitigated gall to say that we would not run a movie like that because of its message of Christ and worship of Christ. And he took it as an offense. Remember, Abe Foxman, who was the former head of the Anti-Defecation League of B'nai B'rith, the ADL of B'nai B'rith, actually snuck in, we're told, to a Florida movie theater to get a pre-screening of the movie on Christ, you know, and the movie that Mel Gibson made, which actually was interesting because he snuck in, or he sneaked in, as a priest. Can you imagine? He disguised himself as a priest. You know, we see in the scriptures that Satan himself disguises himself as an angel of light. Well, he did, and he wanted to see what all the fuss was all about, to the point where the movie that Mel Gibson made about Jesus himself was, as you know, a major success. Prior to it becoming a success, though, Showcase Cinemas refused to actually allow it on any of its screens because of its, quote, very delicate and insensitive message about those who killed Jesus. Well, obviously that turned around when we saw what happened with Mr. Redstone seeing all of the dollars add up, all of the shekels coming in, and they were tens of millions of dollars. Mel Gibson got rewarded at the box office, and only then did Showcase Cinemas turn around and allow it to be shown. So I guess it really depends on money, doesn't it? The whole world, this whole dog-eat-dog society comes down to the love of money and being the root of all evil. Jesus said, in this word that I have before me today, what shall it profit a man if he gain the whole world and lose his own soul? On the forthcoming program, we have a special program that will deal with Hollywood, its connection to the CIA, FBI, the Mossad in Israel, and the entire media, industrial, military complex. How children were kidnapped and abused and put into sex slavery by a former FBI agent himself. You don't want to miss that program coming up. Until then, thank you for watching. God bless, and may Yahweh bless his elect.